Good morning and welcome to Small Business Matters, where we discuss all things small business. Thank you, of course, to Community News for this platform. And as always, we're going to talk about the entrepreneurs that make their companies go and grow. Today I have the founder and partner, as well as her partner, of Sir and Associates. It's a boutique law firm, and I'll let them expand on what that means. Good morning. How are you, Lillian?
Good.
Zach?
Thank
Good
you
morning,
so much.
Carlos.
Thank you so much for having us.
No, of course. It's my pleasure. Thanks for being here. So I wanted to start with boutique law firm. You hear the word boutique for all kinds of different businesses. For Sir and Associates, what does that mean?
Well, boutique normally means small,
Okay.
right? It's another word for saying we're a small shop, and we are. But I like to think of boutique as being hands-on and white glove service for our clients, which is always our goal.
Excellent. I would be remiss if I didn't mention a couple of, I'll say, happenings lately. One is that you're going to be 15 years old.
Yes.
Very soon,
Yes,
right? Your
I am.
15th birthday is coming up.
Yes, it is.
And second of all, you just received a very prestigious award. You are the Female Entrepreneur of 5 years or more of the year. What is that all about?
That was really a wonderful acknowledgement. This is through the Coral Gables Chamber of Commerce. Equitable Life does an annual awards for several categories, one of which is entrepreneur under 5 years and entrepreneur over 5 years. And again, having been starting our 15th year now, coming up soon, it was really quite an honor. All the nominees were really fantastic this year. It took place on International Women's Day, so it was a double honor to win the award. Very humbling at the same time. Entrepreneurship is such a tough road, and it's mostly a lonely road at first, especially. So it was really a feel-good moment.
That's great. We're going to talk about entrepreneurship because you mentioned something that is very common among entrepreneurs, the challenge, the loneliness, and we're going to get back to that. But let's talk to Zach a little bit. Zach, you are now officially an entrepreneur, being a partner in the firm.
Yes.
How did you, tell me a little bit about your background. By your accent, I can tell you're not a Miami boy. So tell us a little bit about your background.
Yes, I'm not from Miami. I was born and raised in Providence, Rhode Island. I went to college in the New York area, Nassau County, Long Island, Hofstra University. But I moved down here right after college. About 2 or 3 months after graduating, I moved down here. So I've lived in Miami my entire adult life. And I'm getting to that point where a lot of Miami folks get, where pretty soon I will have lived in Miami longer than up north. But I'm not going to lose the accent.
So did you go to law school up there or here?
Down here, I went to FIU.
Okay.
Yes.
Excellent.
Yeah. And so when I graduated law school, I started my own practice.
Okay.
I wanted to do
So
transactional work.
I didn't know you were an entrepreneur from back then.
Yes, kind of by circumstance.
Okay.
It wasn't the first choice, but in 2011, there weren't a lot of jobs except for bankruptcy, foreclosure, and that wasn't what I wanted to do. I wanted to work with small businesses, wanted to work with people who have that certain type of character profile. And so I decided to go out on my own and kind of help. That experience helped me understand, I think, the client pretty well. I was doing all right. Then I met Lily, and it made a lot of sense for me to move my very modest book over to Sir and Associates because there was a lot of opportunity to grow and learn from Lily, and I became a much better attorney from that.
Aw.
So kudos to both of you. Lily, you made a transition, several transitions, I think, big law, in-house counsel, right? And now here comes Sir and Associates. Talk to me a little bit about that whole journey.
So like many entrepreneurs, my life as an entrepreneur started by happenstance. So I was at Big Law when I first came out of law school. I was at Schutz and Bowen and then Greenberg Traurig. I started my career doing land use and zoning primarily. I then had an opportunity of going in-house as general counsel to a developer who was working on a very large project here in Miami. And I jumped at the opportunity because not only did it allow me to use my land use and zoning skills, but it also allowed me to expand my practice to corporate matters. I did a lot of leasing for that company and a lot of really big, high-level planning for a company. So it was really a fantastic experience for what was to come, which was the downturn in the economy in 2008 and 2009. So in early 2009, I found myself without a job because the developer had folded at the time, and also without a book of business, which is one of the issues that when you go in-house with a client, that is your only client, which, I learned was a very scary situation. I was a single mom at the time, and I had 2 kids in private school and no job. So it really was out of necessity that I started my firm. And I started it doing government contracting work, which I had done over the years, RFP submissions. And I got my first client through a referral, which was for a restaurant at the airport, which I won that RFP for that client. And that led to additional clients and, again, referrals from friends and other colleagues. And one thing led to another. I started my business in my den of my home. And a couple of years later, got my first one of those suite offices. And then I moved as a subtenant to another attorney. I learned very quickly I'm not a good tenant. I like to call the shots when it comes to where I am practicing. So I ended up then getting a bigger office and so on and so forth. And here we are 15 years later.
That's great. And you just moved, didn't you?
And we just moved. We're back downtown in Coral Gables at the 2020 Ponce building. Very happy to be back walking to lunch to wonderful restaurants in Coral Gables. It's really become a hot spot for business.
Yeah.
We have many of our colleagues there. We are 2 blocks from the Coral Gables Chamber office, which we are very involved in. So we go back and forth quite a few times during the week. So it's really fantastic to be back.
So we're going to talk a little bit about your practice areas, and you just mentioned government contracts, because the cynic in me says, all right, I'm walking through the airport, that guy has a connection in government, that guy has a connection. So I'm thinking these things, and maybe other people are too. How does the process work? How have you become, and either of you can answer, how have you become so successful at getting contracts for your clients?
I understand what you're saying and the cynicism regarding government contracting, and I can't say that it doesn't exist. I don't want to say that it exists in Miami-Dade County because I've never been, I don't have any evidence to that. However, I think that it is such a tremendously complicated and detailed process in order to bid against others. And you're typically bidding against very large concessionaires that have concessions all around the world and have departments that can put together the marketing piece required for such a submission. But I think that there's a lot to be said for the David versus Goliath aspect of applying and bidding. It is a substantial outlay of funds in a process just to bid because of what has to be put together for that bid. Not all of them, but for, let's say, a restaurant concession at the airport, an RFP is a somewhat subjective process in that you're submitting things like your marketing plan, your management plan, what your experience is, what you're going to offer the public. How does that adhere to the requirements of the RFP. And the key to the first part of an RFP is making sure that you address every single question that's asked by that RFP. And going back to the David versus Goliath, I think that it is human nature that we root for the underdog. And in the 6 businesses that I was able to win an RFP for at the airport, I think that I played on that in my presentations and how we wrote that RFP. But at the end of the day, it is a risk for the business owner because you are now paying for an attorney, you're paying for an architect to put together designs for you. Oftentimes, you have to hire a graphic artist for imagery, because when you're representing a small business, you have to show the selection committee that you can compete and that you will be a for sure choice if they select you. So there's a lot of nuances to it, but it can be done.
Interesting. Zach, talking about RFPs still, Lily mentioned something about RFPs being, I think the word you used was subjective, somewhat subjective, or what does that mean, that it's subjective?
Well, when it comes to government contracting, there's different types of goods and service. Everything government buys, they have to do through the procurement process.
Okay.
So when it comes to pencils, or I guess I don't know if people use pencils anymore, keyboards, let's say,
Right.
it's strictly driven by price. It's a good, it's on the market, it's a commodity. But when it comes to something like a concessionaire, or if they were looking for a marketing consultant or legal counsel, it's not always oranges to oranges. So it's not just driven by price. Price is a factor, and it's a big factor.
Okay.
But the RFPs, request for proposals, will have a metrics that, and that's what Lily was talking about. Make sure you hit every point in the metrics. They want someone with at least 5 years of experience. They want somebody who has done this in this capacity, worked for one other airport before, and whatever it may be. However, there's going to be a portion of the points that the panel, it's not just one person, the panel that's put together will look at, and that gives them a little bit of leeway. So even if the price is a little bit higher or lower depending on the circumstance, they might say, well, this is just going to look better at MIA. This concept, the architect, the graphic designers can help sway it a little bit. There's still going to be a lot of objective criteria there, and that's why, like Lily's saying, you're going to have to pay cost up front because you're in your business, you're running your business. You don't have necessarily the time or understand the language. In other words, the way to present this to the bureaucrat who's getting pulled from the solid waste department to review the concessionaire RFP for the park. So you need to be able to know how to present that to them in a way that's going to sway them to say, this is the one we prefer.
Got it. So during this process, is it normal for the bidder to do a presentation, or it's all in the documentation usually?
Again, if it's for a request for proposal, there's typically a presentation,
Okay.
but that is up to the government agency, and they may decide there's no need because maybe there's 5 proposals that were submitted and one really stands out. The request for proposals that I did at MIA, all of them had presentations, and they can be quite impressive, these presentations.
Okay.
I remember we were up for, I want to say it was the pizza concession, and one of the competitors brought in, what's the guy from the Marlins called?
Billy the Marlin.
Billy the Marlin. Pretty fantastic presentation. Ours was much more subtle, but we ended up winning.
Yeah.
So you never know.
Interesting. Talking about your other practice areas, obviously real estate, land use, that's where you got your experience at first. Tell me a little bit about that. What do you help homeowners with, we'll say, and business owners with in that realm?
Going back to your first question about being a boutique firm and working closely with our clients, we like to look at work that we do for our clients in a very holistic manner. And so in regards to real estate or the corporate sides, we really try to take into consideration where that company is at, what they're doing, what are the risks associated with anything that they're doing. In regards to property, one of the things that I work with clients on when they're looking for a place to move their business, whether leasing or purchasing, is to make sure we check the zoning requirements for that particular location, the land use, make sure that the use that they want to put there is permitted. One of the things that you have to consider is when you're moving a restaurant or a medical use, something that is high intense use under a zoning code, is that are there going to be impact fees associated with that? With Durham, for example, I looked at this past year a piece of property for a medical facility that was previously a bank. Well, that requires a change of use, and the impact fees were roughly $350,000 to change the use from an office, a general commercial use, to a medical use. I looked at another piece of property for a medical facility, and we had to do a change of use because it was vacant land, and so we had to get approval for a medical use. Well, there were not only impact fees associated with that, we would have had to construct about 1,000 linear feet of sewer lines down Bird Road. Well, that would add $1 million to that piece of property. So those are really important to consider prior to, at least through your inspection period on a contract. So we really do like to take a solid look at where our clients are going. Sometimes we work with clients at the, when they're not really ready to buy, but they set it out as a goal.
Mm-hmm.
It's always best to buy where you're going to be. You don't have to be beholden to the landlord as far as getting a renewal on that lease. A lot of companies put a lot of improvements, a lot of dollars into improving that piece of land or that particular office, and you want to make sure that you can stay there for quite some time without huge increases in your monthly rent.
Mm-hmm.
So that's basically what I do.
Zach, I know another area is related to the corporate world is entity formation.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like everywhere I turn, everybody's an LLC these days.
Yes.
So what are the different types of entities that you recommend, and under what scenarios, to different people who are starting businesses?
Yeah, so there's a few different ways someone can start doing business, and one is just you start doing business. That's the term sole proprietorship.
Okay.
Partnership is the same exact thing, except it's more than one person. And as soon as you're doing business in commerce, you have a business. Now, corporations and limited liability companies exist as an opportunity to protect you, yourself, and your assets from the liabilities of the business. So if you are selling goods, selling a service, it's very important that you incorporate first before you start exposing yourself to the potential liabilities of that business. So corporations are, I don't want the word ancient, but they go back to like the Dutch shipping times in 1500s. Very old, very well-established law. Limited liability companies were invented in the 90s in Wyoming, of all places. I don't know what went on in Wyoming in the 90s, but they came up with the LLC. So not to get too much into it, but an LLC pretty much combines the outward-facing limited liability protections of a corporation. So it shields the owners from creditors of the company. But internally, an LLC works more like a partnership. And a partnership is blood in, blood out to the death.
What does that mean?
The default law under partnerships and what used to be LLCs is if somebody leaves, the company has to end.
Okay.
So if somebody died, a partner died in a partnership, the partnership is over.
And the LLC is history also, or?
It can be if you don't set your paperwork correctly.
Okay.
The reason everyone uses an LLC is because of the flexibility. So the default rules of an LLC are like a partnership, but you could set up your LLC to operate exactly like a corporation. Whereas a corporation, you have to have a board. You have to have annual shareholders meetings. You have to vote for the board. You have to keep corporate resolutions. There's formalities that you have to follow. And if you don't, you could jeopardize transactions that the corporation has done and also expose yourself personally to those liabilities, which are the whole reason you set up a corporation for in the first place.
So if somebody has a corporation, small company, small business, is transitioning to an LLC a simple process or complicated?
It depends.
Okay.
I don't mean to lawyer it up, but if it's a single owner, not much history, not a lot of licenses, not a lot of contracts, could be very easy.
Okay.
You have multiple owners, multiple years of tax returns. It could be more complicated. No matter what, it's possible. It's just the path there. It would depend on the factors within the company, and there's not necessarily a need. Because if you're the single owner, you have your annual board meeting whenever you want. You have your annual shareholders meeting. You keep a corporate book, and you're okay. I mean, it's a minimal step that you have to take. But if you're starting fresh and you're choosing between an LLC and a corporation, most people lean towards the LLC because of the flexibility and how it's managed, and also you have more tax options. You can be taxed as an S corp. You can be taxed as a partnership. You can be taxed as a C corp. Whereas with a corporation, you're taxed as S corp or C corp, depending on a few factors.
Okay.
So you have more flexibility too.
So this may be more a question for an accountant. Can I
Probably.
can I have my board meeting in Hawaii or Paris or places like that and write it off?
There's nothing that strictly prohibits that.
Okay. All right.
But you might want to seek counsel before you do that.
Okay. All right.
One of the biggest problems we see with the with LLCs and people partnering up with new companies is that they don't have a good operating agreement in place. And many entrepreneurs start with a lot of excitement and a lot of passion, and they're working with their best friend or with a relative. And after a few years, things might sour. And unless you have a good, solid operating agreement that has terms in it as to what happens if you decide, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore, or I can't stand this person anymore, I want out, or if you win the lotto and you want out, whatever reason you want out, or you die or get disabled, unless you have those terms well thought out and included in that operating agreement, it could make for substantial and very expensive litigation. And we see it all the time occur with small businesses where they don't want to spend the money on an attorney to do this, so they create their own LLC on Sunbiz and off they go. And if they only would have spent a little money up front in getting an operating agreement in place, they could have saved themselves a lot of money in the end and a lot of heartache.
So two themes there. We'll start with the affordability of attorneys. And I know you've started a service, or you've had a service now for a while, that addresses that. Tell me a little bit about that, either of you.
Zach?
Sure. So the service you're referring to is the My General Counsel.
Okay.
We've been doing it for a while. The trendy term now we hear within this space is fractional. The fractional CFO, the fractional CMO, the fractional General Counsel.
I know a fractional CMO, by the way.
I know one too. He's all right. But it's that concept. Unless you're a very, very small business, you need professionals who know what they're doing to provide you the guidance for things that you don't have your strengths in. You know, one of the keys to a successful entrepreneur is being able to identify people who can do things better than you and bringing them in. And when it comes to accountants or marketing or legal counsel, especially a licensed profession, you're going to need those people to provide those assistance. However, most small businesses can't afford $300,000 a year for an in-house legal counsel and probably don't have the level of work to justify a full-time person. Right. So that's where My General Counsel comes in. It's a tailored flat monthly fee that is charged to the business and gives pretty much unlimited access to the attorneys. Obviously, the amount of access you use will determine the amount of the fee that's paid, but it's still going to be a fraction. I guess that's where it comes from. Right. Fractional. It's a fraction of what you would pay to have somebody full-time in-house. And the way our service works is we review contracts for you, draft contracts. Like Lily was saying, oh, I'm looking at buying this property. Lily will review and determine whether or not you can do what you want to do there and what you might have to do in Bird Road and how much it may cost. And there is no clock running. All of that is covered under the flat monthly fee.
I started the program probably 10 years ago. The MyGC, My General Counsel program, which we've also trademarked for our firm. And the beauty of it is, from the business owner side, is they can budget their legal expense for the year. So they know, okay, every year I'm sending Lily and Zach X amount of dollars, but I can email them however many times I need to. I can call, I can ask for advice. It doesn't have to be for a specific transaction. It could be a general question. We end up giving, I don't want to say we're business advisors because we're attorneys, but we do, our advice does bleed over onto the business side from an operational perspective. I've had quite a few businesses in my life, and am savvy in regards to, accounting and taxes and management of employees. So with that experience, we bring a more realistic approach oftentimes. Even as attorneys, and speaking to some attorneys, are very technical and they'll speak over your head, not on purpose, but sometimes it comes across that way. So we do like to keep it real for that. And we have had clients on the MyGC program for years now, and it is especially fantastic for entrepreneurs who are serial entrepreneurs or who have a lot of things going on, and they're constantly trying to do new things and expand their business. So as they grow, we can provide the necessary legal guidance and help them grow, at the same time protecting their hard work.
That's really great. So these small business owners now have someone in their corner. I really see it that way.
I'm glad you said that, because the thought and idea came to me when I was representing a client in a pretty complicated lease situation. And some commercial leases are 70 to 100 pages long. And a lot of business owners just sign on the dotted line.
Right.
And I wanted for that small business owner to be able to tell that landlord, thank you for providing me the contract or the lease. Let me have my general counsel take a look at it. And that's how I came up with the name.
That's great. We're running out of time. We don't have time to talk about all the practice areas, but why don't we mention some other practice areas that you endeavor to undertake?
Yeah, sure. So Lily handles the real estate and land use and zoning matters. I do a lot of the corporate work and contracts, buy and selling businesses, operational. We also have attorneys that work with us that handle IP, so registering trademarks, trademark disputes, copyrights, anything related to intellectual property for the most part. We have a litigation team. So if there's a contract dispute on real estate, a dispute related to anything that we do, our litigation team will be able to handle that. If it gets to actual litigation, a big part of our approach is being solution driven. And the practical side of it a lot of times is you might have a great case, but the economics don't make sense. And we'll be the first to tell our clients, yeah, it'd be great for us to go to court, but at the end of the day, when you work with business, bottom line is what ultimately drives the decisions. And so like Lily was saying about the business side of things, that is always part of how we counsel our clients, to think not just legally you have a sound position, but how's that going to play out when the cash flow takes 2 years to try this case. But sometimes you have to. And so we have a litigation team ready there to do that. And we also provide estate planning services to our clients. So as we help them grow and build their wealth, we make sure that it's protected for the next generation.
Excellent. So Lily and Zach, if somebody wants somebody in their corner, a small business, and you deal with individuals as well, because I imagine that.
And big business too.
And big business, correct. I know you've done some real big businesses. I won't mention any names, and I'm sure you won't either. But if somebody needs your services, what should they do?
They should give us a call at 305-222-7282 or drop us an email. You can email me at Lilly, Lilly, at Sir-Associates or Zachariah at Sir-Associates. And we are there to help you any way, which way we can. We typically can handle 80 to 85% of a business owner's needs, from starting a business, growing a business, running the business, and protecting the business.
Excellent. Thank you so much for being on the show. Once again, congratulations.
Thank you.
For your recent accolades and for your quinceañera too.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate being had the opportunity to join you here today. I think that you do a fantastic service to the business community, and we are all about education for small businesses. And I think the more we talk about all of these pitfalls, the better it is for those business owners who are out there. And as I said earlier, sometimes it's a lonely place to be.
And speaking of education, you have a seminar coming up with the Greater Kendall Business Association.
That's right. On April 4th, I think it's at 7:30 in the morning out at the Best Western in Kendall. We will be presenting the top 10 business tips for a business owner.
Excellent. Once again, thank you both for being here.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Carlos.
Carlos. Appreciate it.